So Jada and Mary Elizabeth, you talk about this research project you're doing with young people. Can you tell me a little bit about this research you're doing?
I might say something about the impulses that led to it in the first place.
Sure.
I was concerned back in the 90s that most youth research was done in a macro way, that it was focused on basically white, middle class, suburban Protestant congregations. And so people were looking for the key and so forth. And that research has some value. But I was frustrated that it was too focused on a particular sector of the population. And I saw youth ministry happening all around me that was so exciting, but very different. It didn't fit into that kind of mold. And I also thought that it was time for researchers and scholars to stop trying to come up with theories without listening to people and allowing the communities of difference and the people in different contexts to teach us about things we knew nothing about. So that's what led to the ethnographic studies at the time. And it's the reason that we studied congregations of diversity, and we've spent somewhere between 1 and 2 years in each one of the congregations. So we had a research team, and the research team was also ethnically diverse, which was really important. And it was diverse in other ways too, gender, religious background, and so on. But that was very important because we could catch one another when we were imposing our own agenda, our own interpretation on something we were reading or a story that we had just experienced. So it originated in that desire to complexify and enrich the understandings of youth and youth ministry. And that then led to the need to listen deeply to youth themselves individually and also in small groups. So that led to the desire to do interviews. And that actually has had its benefits in itself, because very often the young people go into these interviews and they say, I don't know if I really want to do this, but I'll do it. And then at the end, they almost always say something like, that was better than I thought it would be. Mm-hmm. Or, that was really fun. Or, I'd like to do this again. And so the richness of the interview process itself was huge. And then we'd sit down and we'd read the transcripts of the interviews, and we discovered all of this richness. On the surface, this person's talking about being a cheerleader or getting their first credit card or something like that. But then you listen between the lines, and you begin to see how this young person is making meaning, is navigating a path for his or her own life. And it's illuminating, besides being fun. So these two pieces of research have been very important, and they've both been over a period of years, so we've collected a lot of data. Mm-hmm. And then Jada had this wonderful idea of doing this study in Puerto Rico, where you can do the many layers of research at one time, and I'll let her speak to that. But the methodology has allowed us to triangulate 3 different kinds of research in order to listen more carefully and listen in ways that we might not normally do.
In terms of how then I've related the case study of Puerto Rico and youth ministry, it's been in the aftermath of Hurricane Maria, right? And thinking how things like this, in terms of national catastrophes, reshape and make you rethink absolutely everything about life, and also some things, and sometimes the people that fall into the cracks in terms of in attending to the needs of everybody, there are people who get left behind. So what I've seen and what I've done in this research is with observations of the context, but also listening to stories and narratives, and seeing how for pastors and for youth to be pastors to include and for youth to be included in the work of rebuilding, of sharing, of caring, of attending to people's needs and the community's needs, because youth are as important, right? And are as needed to be active participants, and not just participants as in following, but also as leaders. So I've seen also a lot of youth taking initiatives and giving out ideas and how that's being implemented in different ministries because it's a collective. And part of how all of that process in the wake of tragedy, in the wake of these things that have been so difficult for Puerto Rico, is joyful to see that you have a purpose, that you also have a choice in terms of an agency of participating and making a difference, and either in a bigger or smaller scale. But really, in these cases, there are no small scales. Everything it's a big contribution.